Hey folks, Wayne over here at the Ram Man Ink. Don't forget the ink. Today I wanted to talk to you about some items in my playpen. Some little interesting facts that some of you might not know. Let me move my lockers. I be messing around with a lot of hubs. A lot of spindles. And unit bearing hubs. Of course, I'm the king daddy of unit bearing hubs. Obviously, I've machined more unit bearing hubs than anybody else. Modified than anybody else on the planet. Since I unleashed the unit bearing hub design on the Dodge truck 6 years ago and then went on to the Chevrolet. I own the Chevrolet market, or IFS, for modern locking hubs, and then of course I have them for the Jeep too. So, but a lot of that comes from messing around with the old school spindle technology from growing up and doing mud buggies when I got out of the Army. Anyway, some interesting facts that some of you may find useful. Here is a Dana 60 rear axle spindle off an old Dodge truck. Here's the hub. Basically, most all these were done on an 8 by almost a 4-inch pattern. It's like a 396. That's how your shafts bolt down. I have to give me some shafts. Right here, we have a Dana 70 hub. Dana 70 hub is bigger than the Dana 60 hub. Here we have a Dana 70 spindle. This is a Dana 70 spindle. This right here is a Dana 80 hub. Dually off that axle out there for the Dana 80 disc brake kits. Matter of fact, these components they come from my mock-ups from the rear disc brake kits that I developed a long time ago. People call them the easy kits. They are easy. So, check this out. Dana 70 hub and Dana 80, they look very similar. They look very similar. Got a little bit different depth on the flange, so if you put this 70 hub on there, you would extend the track. Putting this dually hub on there, you sink the track in. So, this is our 70 setup. We don't have our 80 spindle here. Check this out. So, this is our inside of our 70. Agreed? Inside of our 70. Agreed? Here's the inside of our 80. Do you agree that those are the same diameters? I concur. The bearings are much bigger, much wider, and much bigger rollers. Same ID, but that's the difference. It's dramatic. Then it gets to the outer bearing. There's our 70. Here's our 80 outer bearing. This is a Dana 70 spindle. In other words, 70 HD, like in a Dodge truck from the 90s. And that's from the 90s too. So, the outer bearings are basically the same. The outer bearings are basically the same. Here we have a Dana 60 spindle, like what you would find on a big old Dana 60 knuckle. Voila. Dana 60 front spindle. Remember I told you that the Dana 70 and the Dana 80, that the IDs are the same on the bearings? That this 80 is just much bigger roller, and depth of the cone is a lot more. So this is the Dana 60 front spindle. You typically, your 2 1/4 inch bearing and 2 inch bearing goes right there. This is our Dana 70 bearings. This is our Dana 70 bearings, and this is our Dana 70 hub spindle. Right from the get-go, they look very similar. Right from the get-go, they look very similar. Dana 70 front, 60 front, 70 rear. 70 inner bearing. There you go. That's Dana 70 rear axle inner bearing. There's the outer bearing. If you wanted to drastically change the load characteristics of this, you could do that, couldn't you? Holy shit! Look at that sumbitch. Holy shit. So, there's a Dana 60 front spindle, like you'd find on a Ford with a 5-bolt, or this GM Dodge 6-bolt. And these are Dana 80 bearings on there. Now, normally, right, this front hub goes on there. That's correct. But what if, and of course you got your 30 spline shafts coming through here, or you got a 35 spline coming through here. Once again, stay with me. Look at that big son of a gun. Okay. We have just put a Dana 80 rear hub on this 60 spindle. We have just put a Dana 80 dually hub on this 60 spindle. It's the correct depth and everything, look. You got room for all your nuts and stuff. Yeah. That's a Dana 80 outer. And yet, now if you just got you them spline shafts, just put you some drive plates out here and it's off and running. These are in the wrecking yard. These are big old bearings. Yeah. I figured y'all would like this. All y'all dudes that are ate up with heavy duty stuff. Now, what if you put you a spindle sleeve right there? What if you put you a spindle sleeve right there? There's a 1/4 of an inch difference. You have you an 1/8 inch spindle sleeve. Maybe you might do it real trick. Maybe you do it out of bronze or something, like we do for our inserts. Maybe you do it out of this Lubin bronze. That'd be pretty cool, huh? Run this on the outer. Wouldn't that be cool? That'd be badass. Now we'll move on over to, here's a 1.5 deuce spindle. The 1.5 deuce, 2.5 ton, like those crane people are starting to use, or they're making aftermarket ones. Now the 1.5 deuce, they basically have the same size race. The races are the same. Got a little backing plate scourge on there. There's our 1.5 deuce hub. That's our 1.5 deuce hub. He's got this big old rubber seal. It fits right down around that spindle right there. That's our 1.5 deuce. Inner and our outer. Now we're looking at 1.5 deuce spindle bearings. Hub bearings. Spindle bearings. That's like big enough for your 40 spline stuff. Here's your 60. Now, taking it a little bit further. This is 7 inches. And this is 9 inches. What about if you put this pattern into that spindle? They're already kind of akin to each other. Look at that size. That happens to be just inside the register flange lip. So, if you turn this down and drill these 6 holes, you could bolt this on this knuckle. And if you wanted to, you could run this great big old gigantic setup. Now, here's where the problem runs into, and that's why them people like Operson and Crane Axle, that's why they had to custom design them a new hub. Here's the problem. Well, we'll get into that one on the next video when we do the Deuce and a Half upgrade. God bless you. God bless America. And happy trucking.